Elias Finch kept time for Alderbridge, the way a lighthouse keeps watch over a rocky coast, quietly, faithfully, and a little apart from the people he served. Each dawn he crossed Market Square to wind the four-faced clock set into the red brick bell tower, and each evening he locked his cramped shop on Mill Street, its windows glowing with pocket watches that ticked like crickets in summer grass. The townsfolk regarded Finch as a harmless peculiarity, all gears and spectacles and midnight oil. He, in turn, considered them busy blurts of motion that came and went while the slow logic of escapements and pendulums endured. But on the first Thursday of September, time itself betrayed him. At precisely 2:17 p.m., the great clock halted. Its iron hands froze above the square, catching a gaggle of schoolboys in mid-shout and a cart-horse in mid-stamp. At that same instant, behind the closed doors of Alderbridge's ornate council chambers 3 streets away, Councilman Harold Blythe collapsed onto a carpet the colour of pomegranate seeds and never rose again. Doctors would later fix the moment of his death at, of all things, 2:17 p.m., matching the stopped tower clock to the minute. News rushed through town faster than a falling minute hand. Some found the coincidence eerie, others poetic. Finch felt only dread. The clock had never failed under his watch, and the councilman's sudden passing hung over the coincidence like a dark wing. By dusk, questions were already swirling. Was the stoppage an omen? A protest? Sabotage? The mayor's secretary demanded answers by sunrise. Finch promised them, and climbed the narrow stairs into the tower, lantern in hand, as the last light bled from the sky. The mechanism occupied a cramped loft, smelling of iron filings and pigeon droppings. It was a cathedral of brass gears bigger than dinner plates, each tooth machined with algebraic devotion. Finch had polished those teeth for 20 years. They were as familiar as the bones in his hands. He crouched beside the escape wheel, frowning. The arbor had sheared clean through, snapping like a twig under a boot. Impossible, he thought, probing the breakage with tweezers. The arbor was tempered steel meant to outlive the century. Only 2 forces could snap it: gross misuse or deliberate weakening. He found no scoring, no torque marks, just a line so surgically neat it appeared cut. He carried the broken arbor back to his shop, set it beneath his loupe, and saw it at once. An array of microscopic pocks around the fracture, neat as braille. Acid etching. Someone had painted the spindle with corrosive solution, thinning it until a moderate load would finish the job. The sabotage was brilliant in its subtlety. The clock would hold until the acid ate through, then fail suddenly. Finch's stomach clenched. He thought of Blythe's body cooling on the council chamber rug. Coincidence no longer satisfied him. Someone had timed the clock's failure to the councilman's death. But why? He closed the shop early and headed for the constabulary, where Sergeant Miriam Lark greeted him with owl-eyed fatigue. Alderbridge seldom needed police for more than livestock disputes. A murder inquiry at Town Hall was beyond her usual scope, but she retained a crisp intelligence that had once tempted her toward the city force. Finch laid the broken arbor on her desk and explained his discovery. Someone sabotaged the clock, he concluded, smoothing nervous palms over his waistcoat. I believe it coincided, perhaps purposefully, with Councilman Blythe's death. Lark studied the evidence. You're suggesting the same party killed Blythe and ruined your clock? At minimum, they planned both events to coincide. She leaned back. The councilman appears to have suffered heart failure. No bruises, no poison found yet. An old man dies, gears break. Could be symbolism, but I'll keep an open mind. She slipped the arbor into an evidence bag, added it to a folder marked Blythe, H. That night Finch drifted among his watches, failing to hear their comfort. Blythe had been a fixture at Town Hall. Jovial, silver-haired, always insisting the bakery keep doughnuts warm for Finch's weekly service visits. If anyone had enemies, it was his fellow councilman, whose grafting schemes Blythe opposed with barbed courtesy. Finch thought of graft and of acid. Both ate from within. Next morning, Alderbridge woke to rumours wilder than geese in November. Some whispered Blythe's ghost had stopped the clock. Others blamed a clockmaker's error no man admitted believing. Finch fortified himself with bitter coffee and returned to the tower to replace the arbor. While aligning gears, he discovered another anomaly. The governor pin had been removed and reinserted backward, a trick that would silence the chime 1 strike out of 4, barely noticeable unless you lived by the bells. Finch knew of only one person besides himself, intimate enough with the clock's guts to attempt such mischief. Raymond Quaid, his former apprentice, dismissed 2 years ago after Finch caught him selling counterfeit pocket watches under Finch's signature. Quaid had left town in disgrace, taking with him a lathe, a toolbox, and a grudge. Finch climbed down the tower stairs on legs that felt like unravelling springs and went straight to Sergeant Lark. Quaid, she informed him, had been seen in Alderbridge 3 days ago at the Iron Swan Tavern. That aligned too neatly with the timeline. Lark agreed and obtained a warrant. By evening, they and 2 constables knocked on the door of Quaid's rented room above the Swan. The room smelled of burnt oil and absinthe. On a chewed table sat a jeweller's bench piled with watch cases, acid vials, and moulds, alongside a stack of freshly inked banknotes drying like laundry. Finch's gaze snagged on the note's watermark. Imperfect, yet convincing under casual glance. Counterfeit. Quaid wasn't present. Only a hastily emptied wardrobe and footprints of printer's ink on the floorboards. Lark bagged everything while dispatching patrols towards the train depot. Finch prowled the room's edges until he found a sheet of ledger paper crumpled in a waste bin. On it was scrawled Friday 2:17, silent bell, Vostyarov curtain. After docks, Magnolia. T hates delays. He read it twice before handing it to Lark. Magnolia meant a warehouse on Magnolia Wharf, an abandoned shipping slip at the river. Alderbridge constables rarely patrolled there. Who's T? Lark wondered. Finch recalled gossip. Councilman Theodore Hartley, known for pomp and pockets deep as fjords. Hartley and Blythe had sparred for months over funding for a new civic centre. Blythe accused Hartley of inflating costs, perhaps pocketing the surplus. Hartley retorted that Blythe's saintliness was an act. The council sessions grew so acidic that citizens attended as though it were theatre. If Hartley were T, the clock sabotage masquerading as a mechanical failure could divert suspicion long enough for the counterfeit ring to uproot and vanish. Blythe's death, whether by induced heart failure or sheer shock, eliminated a meddlesome obstacle. Finch's hands shook as he wound a company watch at the evidence table. He feared having ventured beyond the slow predictability of gears into a world of motives and knives. Yet he also felt a steadying click, like a mainspring seating itself. Time could testify. One only had to listen. Lark organised a raid for midnight, but Finch worried Quaid might flee earlier. He volunteered to scout Magnolia Wharf in advance. Lark bristled. She couldn't endanger a civilian. Finch replied that a watchmaker moves quietly and notices what others ignore. Reluctantly, she allowed him to accompany 2 plainclothes officers in an unmarked dray. The sky was a low ceiling of ash as they rumbled toward the river. Warehouses loomed like tombstones. Magnolia Wharf, once humming with grain exports, now harboured only peeling paint and rats' fat on flour dust. The dray halted behind a stack of rotting pallets. Finch and the officers slipped into shadows. A single lamp glowed inside the largest warehouse. Through warped boards, they spied a scene that thudded like an unbalanced pendulum. Raymond Quaid operated a small printing press, feeding linen paper while sweat glazed his brow. Nearby, 2 other men inked plates, artisans in crime. Over them towered Hartley himself, moustache quivering. "Production doubles tonight," Hartley barked. "Banks transfer payrolls Monday. We flood circulation by Sunday, and the genuine funds return to my committee above suspicion." Quaid muttered. His resentment showed in the lash of his ink-stained hand. "Councilman Blythe nearly ruined this schedule. I told you the clock stunt drew attention." Hartley sneered. "The fog loves a lighthouse, and Alderbridge loves a story. They'll gossip about omens while we sail out." Finch inhaled sharply. His breath hung visible in the plank seam. He understood now. Hartley used Quaid's talents to forge municipal bonds and banknotes, laundering them through town projects. Blythe sniffed too close, so Hartley exploited Quaid's bitterness toward Finch for a distraction. Sabotage the clock, kill Blythe at the same moment, let coincidence cloud motives. Quaid probably believed it grand revenge on his old master. Hartley likely planned to discard him after the job. The plainclothes officers withdrew to summon Lark and back up. Finch, left to maintain watch, inched closer for a better angle. Unfortunately, an old board shouted under his boot. Inside, Quaid's head snapped up. In the quickness of fear, Finch stepped back, but his heel caught a coil of rope, and he went down hard, rattling barrel staves. The warehouse door flew open. Quaid emerged, revolver drawn, flanked by Hartley's men. Finch found himself framed in lantern light, spectacles askew. "Well, if it isn't Master Finch," Quaid called, voice edged with glee. How poetic, the maker of time out of time himself. Finch rose slowly, palms up. "Raymond, you don't need more crimes haunting you. Let me walk away, and perhaps the law." "The law?" Hartley scoffed behind Quaid. "My dear Watchmaker, I am the law." Finch's heart pounded like a dropped gear. He stole a glance at the river. Fog crept off the water, cloaking the dockside. Distantly, he hoped the constables were closer than they sounded. "Why involve Blythe?" Finch asked, stalling. "He was your colleague." Hartley's expression twisted. "Colleague? He was a zealot. He threatened to bring auditors. Alderbridge sausage is not for outsiders to see. His heart simply failed him after a frank exchange." The glint in Hartley's eyes suggested otherwise. "Your clock provided a dramatic flourish, and a neat scapegoat should I need one." Quaid waved the pistol. "Inside, now." Finch obeyed, stepping into the stench of ink and damp timber. Forms of half-printed bonds lay scattered like oversized confetti. A pot of acid hissed on a brazier, likely used for erasing watermarks. Finch's nostrils burned with memory. This was the same bite he'd smelled on the sabotaged arbor. "Once the shipment's loaded," Hartley ordered, "we tie a rock to Mr. Finch and let the river mind his hours." Finch's throat closed. He searched for anything resembling leverage, a gear, a strap, a loose plank. He found only the ticking inside his own chest. Then he noticed the press's flywheel spinning by belt. It needed constant momentum. Remove or jam the belt, and it could backlash dangerously. Nearby stood a bucket of acid solution. While Hartley scrawled totals in his ledger and Quaid stacked notes to dry, Finch sidled toward the bucket. He feigned interest in a plate, fingers trembling convincingly. When Quaid barked at him to stand still, Finch knocked the bucket onto the belt. Acid splattered, the leather belt sizzled and snapped. The flywheel shrieked to a stop, flinging its handle backward. Quaid ducked too slowly. The iron arm clipped his gun hand, sending the revolver sliding across the floor. Finch dove, seized the weapon, and rolled behind a crate. Shots thundered, splinters bit his cheeks. Hartley cursed, grabbing his own pistol. Smoke fouled the air. Finch fired blindly, shattering a lantern that set spilled ink ablaze. Flames roared up press paper. Quaid howled, clutching his wrist. Hartley, face lit demon orange, aimed over a makeshift barrier. Finch felt a bullet whistle so near it parted his hair. He scrambled deeper into stacked crates, mind racing like escapements gone wild. He was cornered, outgunned, yet the warehouse itself had become a winding clock awaiting release. Outside, whistles finally shrieked. "Constabulary! Lay down arms!" A dozen voices converged. Hartley snarled and sent 2 shots toward the door, buying seconds. The fire behind him climbed rafters, cracking resinous beams. Finch's courage sparked. He shouted over the din, "Hartley, listen! The press is ruined, the police are here, the warehouse is burning. Your only escape is through me, and I've set back the hands." He pulled Blythe's pocket watch from his vest, a keepsake the councilman had left for cleaning 2 days earlier, and flicked it open. "Listen, Hartley, time's testified." The watch ticked louder than guns in that moment, amplified by the hollow building. Hartley hesitated. In the silence, Finch heard the faintest crunch. Constables circling at the rear. He fired a warning shot into the ceiling joist above Hartley. The beam, half-eaten by termites and fresh flame, cracked and dropped a plume of sparks between Hartley and Quaid. Quaid stumbled back, screaming. Hartley lunged to drag him, but smoke rolled in black sheets. Coughing, he threw Quaid aside and fled for the river doors, running straight into Sergeant Lark's line of sight. "Drop it!" she cried. Hartley raised his pistol. Lark's answered. Hartley spun, one hand to his shoulder, pistol clattering. Constables swarmed him, iron cuffs meeting flesh. Inside, Finch located Quaid curled behind a smouldering barrel, ink stains shining like dark medals. "Raymond," Finch said softly. Quaid looked up, eyes brimming, hatred cooled to sick guilt. Finch urged him toward the exit before the roof surrendered. They emerged into night air punctured by sparks as firefighters pumped river water onto the blaze. While medics treated Quaid's fractured wrist and Hartley's bullet furrow, Lark debriefed Finch. "You're mad," she concluded, half smiling. "And brave. Alderbridge owes you more than another pocket watch service contract." Finch brushed ashes from his sleeves. "I will settle for punctual trains, Sergeant." Days later, investigations unfolded like time-released capsules. Hartley's accounts revealed years of embezzlement laundered through forged bonds. Quaid confessed to clock sabotage, though he insisted Hartley had administered the digitalis that pushed Blythe's faltering heart over the brink. Digitalis, another small dose of poison working silently, like acid on steel. Hartley denied it, but the jury weighed motive against coincidence and found alchemy in the arithmetic. Blythe's memorial filled Market Square. The tower clock, fully repaired, marked 2:17 p.m. precisely during the eulogy, its chimes strong as cathedral brass. Townsfolk flinched, remembering. then sighed when the hands continued their round. Not everything stops forever. Afterward, Finch returned to his shop, where dust motes danced in sunbeams like flecks of solder. He set Blythe's restored pocket watch in the display case beside a small brass plaque, in memory of Harold Blythe, who kept Alderbridge honest. Time reveals all hands. That evening, Sergeant Lark visited, bearing tea instead of subpoenas. She examined the plaque and smiled. Time reveals all hands, she read aloud. That your own line? Finch gave a shy nod. A watchmaker's creed. Lark sipped her tea. You realise Hartley's trial will attract reporters. They'll want the story of the clock, the forgeries, the showdown in the warehouse. Heroic watchmaker saves the day. Romantic stuff. Finch's cheeks reddened behind his spectacles. I am merely a caretaker of moments. Blythe was the hero. You and your constables too. Lark chuckled. Caretaker or not, you noticed what no one else did. You read Time's fingerprints. She set down her cup. Alderbridge could use someone like you as forensic consultant. Finch blinked. I mend clocks, Sergeant. Then mend them for justice. Lark shrugged. Think it over. She rose to leave, pausing by the door. And Finch, try to rest. The town ticks again. The bell above the door tinkled after her. Finch listened to his quiet empire of cogs, each beat a promise against chaos. He thought of acid and archers, of hearts and gears, of how a single second 2:17 p.m. had unmasked an empire of lies. Yes, he decided, time reveals all hands, but only if someone cares to read them. He wound the shop's regulator clock, felt its ratchet settle, and let the steady cadence anchor him to the present. Outside, Alderbridge sighed into dusk, unaware of the delicate pivot between order and entropy that had just been oiled. Finch sat at his workbench beneath a lamp's halo, threading a new mainspring. For the first time in days, he smiled. Somewhere beyond the cracked window, the tower clock chimed the hour, each strike pure, unbroken, and entirely on time.